There is a quiet moment inside every betrayal where the truth does not disappear. It simply gets rewritten. A cheating wife does not wake up one morning and decide to destroy her marriage. She builds a story inside her mind long before she acts on anything. She rearranges her guilt, reshapes her responsibility, and constructs a version of events where she becomes the victim of her own decisions. And this mental shift is what allows her to cross lines she once swore she never would. Female psychology reveals something unsettling. When a woman betrays, she almost never sees herself as the villain. She becomes the misunderstood one, the unappreciated one, the emotionally neglected one. She convinces herself that her actions are not selfish but justified. That she didn't break the relationship failed her first. And before she ever touches another man, she rewrites the narrative of her life so she can walk into betrayal feeling emotionally absolved. The first justification she builds is emotional deprivation. She tells herself she was lonely, unseen, unheard. She repeats a story internally where the marriage became cold, routine, disconnected, and she was the one suffering silently. This story may be true in pieces or exaggerated entirely, but once she believes she was emotionally starved, she feels morally permitted to seek comfort elsewhere. She stops seeing it as betrayal and starts seeing it as survival. She then strengthens this narrative by magnifying your mistakes and minimizing her own. Every time you disappointed her, forgot something, reacted imperfectly, or struggled through your own stress, she adds it to her internal list. She gathers these moments like evidence, using them to justify her emotional drift. Meanwhile, she conveniently overlooks her own withdrawal, her silence, her avoidance, her lack of communication. The mind protects her from acknowledging her own role, because guilt would make betrayal impossible. The second justification arises from emotional comparison. When another man enters her life, even in the smallest way, she begins comparing you to him. Not fairly, not realistically, but selectively. She magnifies his strengths and your weaknesses. She romanticizes his attention and criticizes your behavior. She convinces herself that this new connection understands her better, listens better, cares better. The comparison becomes a psychological escape, allowing her to drift further without confronting the damage she's causing. In her mind, you become the distant partner, while he becomes the emotional rescuer. This shift does not happen consciously. It creeps in quietly. Every message from him feels meaningful. Every conversation feels special. Every emotional moment feels like something she deserved, but never received. The more she compares, the deeper she sinks into the belief that she is not betraying. She is choosing something she should have had all along. The third justification lies in emotional displacement. She begins convincing herself that the relationship is already over. She interprets normal arguments as signs of collapse. She reads temporary distance as permanent disconnection. She recasts ordinary relationship struggles as evidence that the marriage was doomed anyway. This allows her to act as if she's not betraying a living relationship, but stepping out of one that had already died. This is where the most damaging thought appears. I'm not cheating. I'm moving on. She may even tell herself she tried everything, even if she never did. She convinces herself she gave her best, even if she had already emotionally checked out long before, and by the time she crosses the line physically, her mind has already created a world where the betrayal is not a betrayal, but a justified decision. The fourth justification is emotional separation. Women often split their emotional lives into two parts: the life they show you and the life they share with him. When this happens, she stops seeing herself as one unified person. With you, she is the partner trying to maintain peace. With him, she is the version of herself she feels she lost. This emotional split allows her to cheat while maintaining the illusion that she is still a loyal wife in certain parts of her life. She tells herself it's complicated, even when it isn't. She tells herself, I didn't mean for this to happen, even when she allowed every step. She tells herself, it's not serious, even when it is. The emotional separation becomes a mental shield, protecting her from feeling the full weight of what she is doing. But the deeper she goes, the harder it becomes to maintain the illusion. The fifth justification is selective responsibility. She takes responsibility for her emotions, but not her actions. She acknowledges her loneliness, but not her betrayal. She admits her pain, but ignores the pain she is causing. She convinces herself that her choices were reactions, not decisions, as if the affair happened to her, not because of her. This selective responsibility allows her to see herself as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of her own choices. And because female psychology places strong weight on emotional reasoning, she believes her feelings justify her actions. I felt unwanted. I felt ignored. I felt misunderstood. In her mind, because the emotion was real, the betrayal becomes understandable. She does not excuse the behavior entirely, but she reduces the blame enough to continue without breaking apart emotionally. The sixth justification is emotional displacement onto you. She begins subtly resenting you for the guilt she feels. She gets irritated easily. She criticizes everything. She becomes distant but blames you for it. This psychological projection allows her to hide the real reason behind the emotional shift, her involvement with someone else. By blaming the relationship, she avoids blaming herself. This projection becomes stronger the deeper she gets. She interprets your normal behavior as flaws. Your attempts to connect feel suffocating to her. Your presence becomes a reminder of the guilt she is trying to escape. So she pushes the blame outward, using your imperfections to justify her actions even more. The seventh justification is emotional idealization of the affair. She creates a fantasy around the other man. She imagines that he brings out the real her. She convinces herself that this connection is unique, rare, impossible to explain. She ignores his flaws entirely. She overlooks red flags she would normally see instantly. The fantasy gives her emotional permission to keep going, even when she knows the consequences. This idealization is powerful because it blinds her to reality. She does not compare the two men fairly. She compares the fantasy of one to the responsibility of the other. And responsibility always loses to fantasy. The eighth justification is the most dangerous: emotional entitlement. She believes she deserves happiness, even if it comes at the cost of your pain. She believes she should not have to sacrifice her desires anymore. She believes her emotional needs must be met immediately, regardless of commitment or loyalty. And once entitlement enters the picture, betrayal becomes easier for her to rationalize. She tells herself, "I'm only human." She tells herself, "I need to feel alive again." She tells herself, "I deserve this after everything I've been through." And with each justification, she drifts further from guilt and deeper into emotional self-protection. The ninth justification is rewriting history. This is where she begins retelling the story of your relationship in a way that supports her choices. Suddenly, the good moments become irrelevant. The loyalty you showed becomes invisible. The sacrifices you made become forgotten. She reconstructs the narrative so that the affair fits into a storyline where she was the neglected partner rather than the betrayer. Women do this unconsciously to reduce the emotional weight of guilt. And finally, the 10th justification is emotional surrender. She reaches a point where she stops trying to convince herself she's right, and instead convinces herself that the consequences will be worth it. She accepts the damage as unavoidable. She normalizes the betrayal to survive the internal conflict. This surrender allows her to continue without emotional breakdown, even though she knows she crossed a line that can never be undone. By the time a woman cheats, her mind has rewritten the story so deeply that she no longer sees the betrayal the way you do. She sees it through a lens shaped by emotion, justification, and self-protection. Not because she is heartless, but because her mind protects her from the full weight of what she's doing. And that is how a cheating wife justifies her actions, not through logic, but through emotional storytelling powerful enough to silence her conscience long enough to betray someone who trusted her completely.